Hello all, welcome back to New Chapters. My name is Sarah, and if this is your first time joining me, I just want to say thank you for stopping by for this chapter of my life. I'm a hobby hopper, so if this isn't the content you usually watch me for, I hope you enjoy this hobby as well and will stick around for today's video. Today we're going to be doing another WIP and Chat. WIP, W-I-P, just stands for work in progress. Feel free to pull out a project or a diamond painting kit that you're working on and you can work alongside me, or you can just listen to me chat and treat this as more of a podcast, whichever you would prefer. Some housekeeping items about what I'm working on today. I'm still working on my Enablers Outpost kit. This is the Winter Girl kit. They no longer have this kit. It was licensed through Shutterstock, but I will link just to their website down below and you can look to see what they currently do have available in stock. Some tools that I'm going to be using are this diamond painting pin from Diamond Art Club. This is just the regular end on this side, and then on this side I have the Diamond Art Club metal single placer tip, and then I do have it still secured in here, which is to clear hair tie. And then in the tip I am using micro-sized glue dots as kind of my wax alternative. If I need them, I also have a pair of tweezers from Dreamer Designs. These are just the standard tweezers that come in the Dreamer Designs kits when you order one from them. And then for my tray, I am going to be using my Firefly Diamond Art tray. This is their element tray, which you can see here on the back. So this is one that has a lid. It also has a little trash tray, and then it has different grid lines at the bottom. So you have the multi-placing grids, you have the single placing grid, and then you have the standard lines that come in most trays. So I'm just going to be using the standard tray today. And then I believe that is all. Oh, and then I have my Elizabeth Ward tray kitted up over outside of the screen to my left here that I will be pulling my diamonds from. But I believe that is really all I have for tools and things like that. So while I am making myself a section here to work on today, tell me about what's going on with you guys. Anything crazy, anything exciting, anything happy, I don't know, interesting, any of those adjectives, anything good or bad that you would like to share about in the comments. I would love to know about what's going on in your guys' life, since you guys listen to me ramble on about what's going on in my life. I'd love to be able to help you guys and support you, whether that's for positive things or maybe not so great things that are going on. Let me know about it in the comments below. I would love to hear about them. And again, as I said, offer any sort of support, whether those are for the good things or the not so good things that we've all got going on in life right now. So I believe that's probably a good size section for today. I certainly will not get through that during the WIP and Chat, but that'll be a good size section to work on for now. Let me see here. Let me make sure I got my list of things for this week pulled up here and I don't forget anything. I really don't have a whole lot of stuff going on in terms of updates, so maybe this will be a little bit shorter. Every time I say that, it's always a really long video. So we'll see what actually happens here. But I don't have too many things on my list. Biggest thing really is that I have finally been unpacking things again. So for those of you who have been here for a little while now, you might be aware of the fact that my partner and I, we moved into the unit that we currently live in. At this point, it's been like 7-ish months ago. And when we moved in, we set up, you know, the basics, the necessities, the things you had to set up that made like life functional and whatever. So, you know, we set up like the bedroom and made sure we had the bed and the sheets and all that kind of stuff. And we both have like our own sort of office spaces. So we set those up since those are kind of necessary in some ways to allow us to be able to kind of decompress and recharge and all that sort of jazz. So the things that were incredibly important that like we needed to have set up, we had those set up within the first, you know, week or two of moving in. But once we had set up those areas, we never really set up the rest of our unit. So our like living room area that's supposed to be the living room, we kind of had just been using to store boxes and things that we didn't want to like store out in the garage while we were waiting to unpack things. So we've been living, kind of with like, what's it called? Like, not nose blindness, but kind of like out of sight, out of mind to some extent for the stuff we've had in our garage. And then the stuff that we've had in our living room area, we've just been kind of ignoring. Like, it's been there for long enough that it's kind of like you almost forget that the clutter is there. You're well aware that it's there, but like you start to just walk around the boxes and don't even register that there are boxes there anymore. I'm sure for those of you who have ever had, that stack of things that you're like, I put it on the counter so that I deal with it or so I'd remember to do it, and then it sits there for like 3 weeks or 3 months or however that long that time frame ends up being. Um, and you just kind of eventually learn to ignore it and you almost kind of forget that it's there and you're like, oh, where's that thing that I am thinking about or was looking for? And you're like, oh, it's in the pile that's right in front of my face, but like I've been ignoring it for so long, I don't register that the pile exists. You know what I mean? That's kind of how all the boxes in our actual living room space had turned into, at least for me. I'm not sure if my partner necessarily felt the same way, but he, you know, he lets me do what I would like to do with our living space for the most part. So he also knows that I am particular about things. So, like, even if he had been like, I'm gonna do this, I would have been like, absolutely not. Now, granted, that might have been the motivator I needed to just do it myself months ago, but he hasn't really harped on me too much about it. But I finally got the motivation to like start working on unpacking some stuff. What I'm most interested in unpacking is my books on my bookshelf, which also leads into another tangent story, but I'll get to that in a minute. But I've been really motivated to want to unpack my books and get them out and displayed again. Um, so that's kind of my overall motivator. But when we were in the process of moving, the movers that we had hired broke one of the bookshelves that I had. So I had to get a new bookshelf, which we bought shortly after we moved in, but we haven't put it together. And so I've been, I mean, not that I can't put together a bookshelf, but I've kind of been on the boat of like, if I can convince my partner to build this for me, that would make my life easier. So I'm sort of working on unpacking things in hopes that like I can motivate him to build a bookshelf for me so that I can unpack all of my book boxes. But again, since I've been motivated to unpack, I haven't wanted to waste that motivation and that energy because I don't always have that in me. So I have been unpacking other things. So like we have like a whole bunch of kitchen appliances and stuff that I bought a shelf, like a metal rack shelf to put in our kitchen area. Um, so I put that together and then unboxed all of those boxes that had kitchen appliances and things like that. We have board games that we have too many board games, as you know from watching my channel. We're definitely in a hobby hopping channel here. So one of my things that I get kind of addicted to buying and like kind of get really into doing for a period of time every year is playing board games. And my partner, him and his friends are big board game people too. So like we both have a little bit of that problem where we're gonna buy way too many board games than what we need. But I had bought another shelf system to store all of our board games because the like cube unit we had been using, we outgrew it. Um, so again, definitely not a great thing. It's a problem. We have way too many board games. I will admit that fact. Um, but yeah, so I decided to set that up as well while I was kind of waiting for him to pick up some of my motivation and feel that in himself to help me build my bookshelf. So unpacked a lot of boxes, finally got pretty much everything besides my books set up that I had been wanting to get, or that has still been needing to get unpacked from our garage and like brought inside. And then once I do get to put my books away, I think that's really all of the stuff from the garage that like I want to bring inside. that's another longer term project. Is I definitely have some stuff that like I want to hold on to, that I want to keep, but like isn't something that I need to have inside my house at any given time. Don't need it to be that easily accessible, just more wanting to keep for memorabilia's sake. So at some point, that's kind of a long term goal, is to get like some storage totes and bins and stuff that we can put like memorabilia or things that we want to keep or that we don't really use that often but we'd like to keep in the garage. Um, I want to get some like plastic stuff to put all that in because I just think it'll keep better that way. If there, are there's certainly bugs out in the garage, so between bugs and if there was ever any sort of like mice that get in, or if there's flooding or something like that happens, obviously cardboard boxes are not the thing that's going to keep all of that stuff from getting ruined out in the garage, where we are planning to store it. So I'm hoping that that can be kind of a long-term project, is buying up some totes that we can put all of that long-term storage stuff into, so that again, hopefully I can keep it but also not have to be worried about it getting damaged by the elements or by critters or any of that kind of stuff. But yeah, so hopefully once I again motivate my partner to help me build the bookshelf, or finally give up on him and just build it myself, then I can unpack my books and then we'll have everything really unpacked. The only other spot that we need to do some work in still is like our entryway area. um, we have kind of a little nook when you first walk in that I want. We built we have like a little shoe bench thing that we got and built already that I want to put there, but then we have some coat racks that we need to hang up. But my partner was like, we need to get like a stud finder or something so I can drill it into the wall and not puncture anything that's important or crucial, or make sure I'm drilling in the right spots. um, so once we got that, now has the ability to help me hang those up so we can have coat racks, and then I can shuffle some things around and get our entryway officially set up. But that kind of leads into part of the problem with the entryway is we have like a coat closet, um, but I don't want to use the coat closet for coats, which is why we got the racks. Because, well, first off, we have a spare mattress, and the only place we could really store it was either outside in the garage, which I really did not want to do, or it fits in this coat closet. So we have shoved our spare mattress into this coat closet. So half the coat closet is taken up by a mattress. But um, part of me originally was thinking about like storing some like cleaning stuff, like vacuum and broom and mop and all that kind of stuff in this closet as well. But we've decided that it actually makes a pretty good place for like a tornado shelter, because our unit doesn't have a basement. It just has, the first floor and then obviously the second floor, but you don't want to be up there during a storm. Um, but since, it's a small space, it does have, I think, technically an outer wall. So it's not the best place, but it's better than any other place that we have in the unit, for like a tornado shelter situation. So we kind of decided that that's our go-to tornado shelter. So I wanted to get a coat rack so that we could hang up the coats not in the closet, because then we don't have to like clean out the closet every time there's severe weather. We can just go into the closet, um, and I don't have to worry about taking a whole bunch of coats out of there and finding a place for them and all that kind of stuff. And then again, if I had used it for cleaning and stuff, I kind of wanted to have that be an empty space anyway, so that we didn't have to worry too much about, having to try to dig around for the top of the vacuum or the broom or whatever, through coats and other items that were hanging up in there. So besides that, and then the books, that's really all I still have to do inside our unit. Um, but as I said, kind of speaking of severe weather, that's been another thing that's been ridiculous. there were some storms that, like, we already knew it was going to be like a big day for storms and stuff. Like, it was one of the first, I think, in a long time that, well, maybe not. That's not true, I guess. I haven't paid a lot of attention necessarily to like the weather prediction charts and stuff. I always am aware of like severe weather stuff that's coming up and whatever because I keep my ear to the ground on that kind of thing. But I've never really paid attention to like the storm prediction charts and the percentages, and like apparently they have this like hash mark system that means, even if we're only putting you in a pretty low chance of seeing like a tornado or hail or wind or whatever, if we have the black hash marks over your location, that means that you're more likely to see something that's like pretty substantially severe or damaging if something were to occur. So like there can be a low probability of, for instance, tornadoes, but if a tornado occurs in this section that we've hash marked off, that means that those tornadoes are going to be, I think specifically for tornadoes, it's like EF2 or higher, if they do happen. So like they're not just going to be little teeny tiny, I mean, still destructive for sure, but like they're not going to be short lived, minimal destruction storms and tornadoes. They're going to be things that pack a punch and can be incredibly dangerous. So we had some storms that were coming through this week that were like that, and they did produce some tornadoes in my area, um, that touched down, were on the ground, did some significant damage, caused at least one fatality that I know of, that they reported on. I mean, and I mean, they're not incredibly close. Luckily, there was nothing that ended up being incredibly close to me or anybody that I, friends and family, all that kind of stuff, anyone I know. But it's still scary when like the newscast that you watch, that because they're in your area, are reporting on tornadoes on the ground in a very destructive like nature. And I don't know, definitely, again, we've talked before about having some storm anxiety and whatever, and that was, again, there ended up not being any tornadoes actually on the ground near me, but there were storms that were, splitting between my town and the town directly north of me. um that like there was storms with rotation going by, and on top of all of that, the wind was just as damaging as um like a tornado might have been for some parts of the storm. And again, luckily I did not end up experiencing a lot of severe wind, but I mean, they were talking about straight line winds that were 70, 80, 90 miles per hour, which can be just as destructive, um, and dangerous in some ways as tornadoes can be. And there was supposed to be hail threat. I don't believe they ended up really having significant hail threat by the time it was all said and done, at least for my area. But definitely was one of those times that I not only had the bag packed, and ready to go for, if something were to happen, I can grab my bag and like I have important things that I'd like to have or would need to have, in an emergency situation. But I actually was like, I'm gonna go ahead and hop in the closet and take cover tonight and stay safe out here. So those are not fun times. Don't love that experience where, I mean, again, I'm always kind of anxious about storms, but when it actually gets to the point where I'm like, okay, time to take cover, that is never fun, never an ideal moment, at least in my opinion. But yeah, so there were some storms again, and I know there's some more severe weather in the forecast, so yay. So glad that it keeps happening over and over again. I don't know. Not to, speak on something I don't know entirely that much about, but I always kind of chuckle when, I don't know that at this point people still think global warming isn't occurring. But I'm like, I would like for you to explain why there's no longer a tornado season. Like, it's just tornadoes year round because the air is warmer for more of the year. And it's like, to me, the natural disasters that keep occurring at a higher rate than it has been in the past seems to me like a pretty good indicator that perhaps, just maybe, global warming does exist, and you can't disprove that by those facts. But again, I don't actually know anything. Maybe none of that has anything to do with it. But in my head, that is a great indicator that global warming is happening, and we can't disprove it. More hurricanes and tsunamis and earthquakes, and I mean, all of the things that can be impacted, besides just tornadoes, from weather and the way that we as a humankind are kind of treating the planet on a regular basis, and all of that kind of stuff. So, yeah, not great again to be facing down storms already once and have some more in the forecast. Um, and also, again, I mean, glad to know about the hash mark system, but honestly, even growing up, in Tornado Central, where storms are anticipated, I had no idea that they had that additional system about like storms that could be more severe or more intense if you have a hash mark over them. So that was interesting to learn, I guess. Luckily, did not see that play out in my area, but certainly was kind of more alarming, made me a little more alert. Definitely was like, that's why I'm getting in the shelter now instead of waiting for them to say, hey, your county is also, well, your city is also in this tornado warning, because my county definitely was for a little bit in a tornado warning, but my city was not, luckily. As I said, it ended up splitting between us and the town north of us, and I don't believe by the time that it reached our area there was still anything on the ground, but it had the, rotation in the clouds that was radar indicated, so could have dropped down again at any point in time. Um, but yeah, to get off my storm horse here, I guess. The other thing I kind of alluded to that I wanted to circle back to is about books. So as I mentioned, I have been motivated to unpack my books on my bookshelf, and ironically, I guess that has been in part because I went to our local library this week, and my partner had a book on hold that he was like, oh man, like the hold is going to expire on this. And he's like, and I just don't feel like going to the library this weekend. So I told him, hey, like if you let it expire, like just put it back on hold. And I was like, either we can go this coming weekend, or I was like, or we can wait until, or I said I could just go on my own, and you don't have to go with me. And so that's what ended up happening. I ended up just picking it up on Monday, and grabbing his book. But since I was going to the library, I was like, well, I only have a couple books left since the last time I checked anything out. So I decided I would go ahead and pick up some more books. And I ended up gathering up a list of several books from their website that I, had on like lists of things that I was interested in. Or I think what it actually started with was I looked up like a recommended by the librarians list sort of thing. And in that process, it was like, I was like, oh yeah, I should go back and look at some of my other lists from things that, I've seen on like BookTube or on like the internet that like are just different, like best mystery books of this month or whatever list that I've encountered that I've saved some things from. So I was getting so excited and happy about books that I ended up having to check to see how many books I could check out from my library at any given time because I had so many on my list. So I ended up checking out, let's see, I ended up checking out 14 books for myself. In addition to the two that I already had, I took a little picture of the stack. So if I remember, I will add that into my WIP&Chat so you guys can see what my stack of books ended up looking like. I have a spot underneath my desk that I've been keeping them just because it's out of the way of everybody else and it's out of my way, but like easily accessible when I finish a book and want to read something else. And it just perfectly fits underneath the window seal. Um, next to my desk. So I was like, well, that was perfect. It is exactly the number of books that I could possibly have in this space, at least based on their width and stuff. And then there's one book that doesn't fit underneath, but it's the book I'm currently reading. So that was totally fine because that book I had out on my desk at all times, or like on my nightstand or whatever. Like it's never in that pile. They're only in that pile if I'm not currently reading them. So I thought that was funny. And don't be impressed by my 14 books that I checked out. I am a relatively slow reader, I feel like. I've always been that way, or at least always felt that way. And maybe it's not that I'm necessarily slow. Maybe I just am not dedicating as much time, like in a day or a week, as some people are to reading. I try to read a little bit every single day, but it still takes me, I mean, at minimum, like 2 weeks to get through a book in most cases. And in most cases, it's normally closer to 3 or 4 weeks before I get through a book, even if I am reading a little bit every single day. So, I'm certainly not going to get through these books for quite a long time, at least the whole stack. So, don't be impressed by the 14 books. It'll probably take me the rest of the year to actually read all of them if I even get through all of them, if they don't get requested and I have to return them back before I get to them. But I have been very excited by books recently. And I mean, the flip side of this too is as of right now, I'm back to being unemployed, so I've got more free time. Um, so I've been reading a lot more this year. I already have, let's see, I wanted to kind of stack the deck in my favor to get through, my goal was to get through 12 books this year, which has been my goal for several years in a row now. And I don't think I've reached that goal once. Um, so I kind of stacked the deck in my favor this year and I read one book that was like a typical regular novel book, first, but then the second and third book I read this year were both like short story books. So I think they were like 200 ish pages each. Um, but I wanted to be like, hey, I've already read 3 books by the time January ends, right? And like make myself feel better. And I don't know if it was that was the psychological side of it, or again, just the fact that I've been home alone doing nothing most days. Um, and that's not completely true, but I've got more free time when I'm at home all day, and don't have to go to work and all of that. So I've been reading more, and I think, let's see, at this point, I think I've read 11 books so far for the year. So by the beginning of, I should say by the end of May, I'm sorry, not by the end of May, by the end of April, I had read 11 books for the year. So I'm certainly on track. I absolutely will finish at least one more book this year. So I'll finally hit my 12 book goal, where I think, again, like the first time ever, at least since high school, um, that I have successfully read 12 books. And the only reason I even maybe read 12 books in high school was because, you're required to read so many things for school. Um, but yeah, so I'm pretty happy about that. And I mean, I think that's all motivating me to, want to unpack my own books and get back to reading. That was part of it, is I was like, I don't know, maybe it's a lie, right? I've told myself that I don't really love sci-fi books and that like science fiction stuff is not really something that I like to read about. But then I keep checking out these books that are about like time travel, and like there was one that I read last year that was like, oh, what was it? Like, I can't remember what the name of the book was, but the premise of it was like about Hell's Librarian or something like that. Um, and it's like, obviously those are all like science fiction based topics, so maybe I have to admit to myself that I actually do enjoy science fiction books. um, it still pains me a little bit to say it out loud. I don't know why I'm so against enjoying science fiction. I still think fantasy specific stuff that's more like witches, wizards, fairies, that kind of stuff is not necessarily my preferred. Though I did check out like a folklore Rapunzel retelling book or something like that. So like, who knows, maybe. But mystery is like mystery and thriller is really my favorite kind of book to read. Um, and so I think that was part of it is I own a lot of mystery and thriller books that I haven't read yet. And so that's why I wanted to unpack my books for my bookshelves for home because I was like, man, I've really been reading a lot of like sci-fi stuff, haven't been reading as much mystery recently. So I was like, I really kind of feel like reading a mystery book. And so I think that's part of what's been motivating me to want to unpack my boxes of books is because I'm like, I don't even need to check those out at the library. Like, not that I couldn't, but I'm like, I already own a whole bunch. I'd like to read some from some of my favorite authors, and I have a whole bunch of them that I haven't read yet. So that's been sort of a motivator driving me to want to go ahead and unpack those things finally. So I'm glad for that. I'm happy about it. I mean, hopefully, I have my interview next week for my old job and hopefully that goes well and hopefully I get a job offer in the near future. But I'm glad that I'm getting the motivation then to kind of get our house together, kind of one last hurrah right before hopefully I am back to having less time and going back to the way everybody else has been living for the rest of this year. Having a job and not having downtime to read and unpack and do all the things that I want to be doing, right? Alrighty. But yeah, another little thing that occurred this week is I did get a jury duty notice, which who knows if they'll actually call me in as a juror. And then, even if they do, I highly doubt I would be allowed to stay and sit on any sort of jury. The only other time I've ever been called in for jury duty was, or like received a letter for it or whatever, was when I was um, living with my ex. He was military, and so my like permanent address I just kept as the house that I grew up in. And so that was my permanent address. And even though I had IDs or whatever in other states, I've learned since doing all this stuff that like just because you go get a new ID in a new state doesn't mean that the old state, when they're notified of your new ID, like takes you off of voter registration lists and things like that. So I had received a letter to my, childhood home calling me in for jury duty before, and they just, had you fill out like a questionnaire about, where are you currently living? Are you still living in this state and county and all that kind of stuff? Um, so that was how I didn't have to go and like report in for that jury duty, um because I was like, nope, I my like residence address is this, or my mailing address I mean is this, but my residential address is this, in a completely different state, so I will not be reporting for jury duty. And that was totally fine, that worked out, whatever. But they called me in technically for jury duty for my current county. So this is the first time, as I said, that I've actually lived in the place that's called me for jury duty when it's happened. So we'll see if they end up calling me. And again, if they do, I'm sure I'll be dismissed, um, because I previously worked in the county's jail. um, it's kind of a weird give and take on jury duty, right? Because like I, as somebody who, studied criminal justice and like am a part of the system, like am very interested in juries and how they all operate and like would love to be a part of one, but I also recognize that like I'm probably unlikely to be a, you know, unbiased juror member. I don't know, it's hard, right? Because like on the one hand I'm like, well, I wouldn't be biased about anything. Like I would have my same opinions about people and treating people humanely and all that kind of stuff that I have already as a person, period. But like, obviously, as somebody who's worked within the system before, who's trying to, get hired back on as a probation officer now, like, not something that a jury would probably want to have, or attorneys, I should say, would want to have on their jury, would be my assumption. I don't know. Maybe they want a whole jury full of people who have experience working within the criminal justice system. Maybe that is their ideal population, but I highly doubt it. One of the questions was like, "Are you friends or family members with any law enforcement officers?" And I was like, "Well, that's a weird question because I'm like, I'm not really friends with any of the law enforcement members that I know from working at the jail, but like I know who these people are, right? Like I've worked with them before. I know some of them from like a professional coworker seeing in passing sort of thing. They were never anybody that I worked with directly per se, but like I worked with these people. So I was like, I don't know, I'm not friends. So I ended up putting, because the other thing, they ask about was like your occupation and um like where you currently work. Well, obviously, when I say where do I currently work, I'm currently unemployed. So I was like, this isn't going to give them good information to know that I have ever worked in the jail before for this county. So I was like, I'm gonna go ahead and add that. So that's what I did. Like in the employer section, I put unemployed, but in the occupation section, I put not applicable. But I did work for this county's jail this year, within the last year. So I was like, hopefully that's enough information to help them maybe steer clear of me. Would again be my assumption, but I was a little, I don't know. I'm not in the first like chunk of group, so like normally when you get called for jury duty, like you get assigned a group number, and depending on like how big the county or the jurisdiction is or whatever, I'm sure depends on the number of groups in a particular area at that time or whatever. But I'm in not the first set of group numbers. I think I'll be in the second set of group numbers. So I have a chance of being called in for it. Again, I assume I'll get dismissed, but the way that it sounds like the county that I currently live in operates, it's like you have 2 weeks in the future that have been assigned to you, that you are required to check in for jury duty. And even if you get dismissed at some point earlier in your 2 week stint, you still have to continue to call in because you might be required to report for like a secondary or third or whatever. I think they do like twice a week. So like you have a potential of up to 4 times being called in for jury duty. But it sounds like even once you're dismissed the first time, that doesn't mean that you're done with your jury duty duties. Like you have to keep checking in with them for your full 2 weeks, in order to fulfill that obligation. So we'll see how it all goes. I do think it's funny though, because I'm like, man, if I actually end up getting a job with really either of the places that I've applied to for positions recently, I imagine that I'll probably not start until June at the earliest at this point. And my jury duty time is for a period of time in June. So I'm like, won't that be fun? I'll be like, hello, I would like this job, but I also need you to let me off or to respond to jury duty for 4 days in my first like month of employment. And it's like, isn't that kind of ironic? Like, I don't know. Like, hello, thanks for letting me become an employee. Let me not be here for my first, couple of weeks as a dedicated employee. But, I mean, obviously for jury duty, I don't believe legally your employers can say no, and certainly not employers that are government jobs that are based in the criminal justice system. They're not going to be like, you're not allowed to report to jury duty or anything like that. So they don't really have much of a choice in the matter, but I do find the timing of it all kind of funny. It's like I've been sitting at home with no job for, you know, probably at least 6 months by the time that this all is said and done, hopefully. um, Besides 1 month in intermixed in there that I was working, but even then I wasn't working that many days a week. Um, wasn't working like a full time job by the standard 40 hours or anything like that. And one of my days that I was working was on the weekend, so like wouldn't have had to report for jury duty on a Sunday. So I just thought it was funny that like now is when you decided to call me in to report for jury duty. Like the timing of it is just funny. And again, I probably, even if I have to report, will probably get dismissed, would be my assumption on everything. So I can't imagine that I'll be spending my full day doing anything related to jury duties if they ever even call my group in. Um, but yeah, I thought that was kind of funny. And I kind of freaked out because I forgot that I had received a letter in the mail, and I was like, oh, I bet this is a jury duty notice, just because you just know. You know when you get the random piece of mail from the county that you live in, and you're like, well, it's not my driver's license or, my voter registration or my car registration. Like, it's not any of those things. It's like, well, this is probably a jury duty notice. And I forgot I had grabbed it with some mail and I was doing something else. And so I put it down in a stack. Well, then it just lived, as we talked earlier about stacks that you just, forget about, was living on my stack of mail that I had previously opened and was like, I need to do something with this, but never did anything with it. So it sat in my stack of mail for a couple of days before I opened it. And I was like, well, it's a good thing I looked at it because, I mean, I don't know how much it would have come back to bite me or not, and if anyone would have, cared enough to prosecute or whatever. But the letter says, you have to respond to this online portal within 7 days of receiving this letter. And of course, I'm looking at it going, oh my gosh, like this was date stamped for, a week and a half ago already. And I was like, oh no, I probably missed my timeline or my deadline, and I'm going to get in trouble for this if anybody actually cares to follow up on this. But then I also realized they had mailed it to my previous address, so it was forwarded to me from the place that I lived 7 months ago. So I'm like, well, technically, I didn't actually get it more than 7 days ago. It was mailed out more than 7 days ago, but by the time that it got mailed to my first place and then got rerouted to my new place, and by the time I got it out of the mailbox, I was like, I definitely have not surpassed this window. It's fine. And it let me into the portal and stuff, so I presume that means they, weren't gonna come and arrest me for accidentally forgetting to fill out my jury duty notice paperwork on time. So that all got filled out and, as I said, was submitted. We'll see if they even call me in or anything, or if I'll be asked not to come in, period, because they're like, well, we're not even going to choose you anyway, so don't even bother with coming in. I don't know how that process will work. I mean, I'm sure every jurisdiction probably deals with things a little bit differently. I'm sure someplace that's smaller probably is more likely to have that personalized touch, and someplace that's bigger probably wouldn't, you know, tell you that individually. They would just make you come in and then send you on your way. So once you're there and they're answering questions and stuff in person. But I don't know. We'll see how it all pans out. Obviously, if I actually get called in for jury duty, I won't be able to tell you guys all the juicy things that are going on in any of the hearings that I'm sitting in on. But as I said, I don't expect that I would even be allowed to sit on a jury, unfortunately. I'm probably in the group of people, one of the groups of people who's the most interested in how that whole process works and what it would be like to sit on a jury. But unfortunately, because of that fact, in some ways, I would not probably be able to sit on one. But I had that happen, and then the only other thing that's like personal life related is I was going to follow up with you guys about some things I talked about in my last video. Again, I shouldn't be self-diagnosing mental health concerns by any means, but I was kind of curious after I had, chatted about, getting kind of hyper focused on some stuff and hyper fixated and, feeling like, man, I can't even like do day-to-day tasks, and being like, that's not quote unquote normal. I know that's not. And again, the real solution to this is I need to get scheduled with some sort of therapist, psychiatrist, psychologist, whatever, to get some actual diagnoses for anything that I might have. But I was curious, so I ended up finding just some like online tests for like autism and ADHD and stuff like that, just to see what they would say as kind of a preliminary, like, is this even something that is worth considering, or like, am I just crazy and, learning too much about these different sorts of mental health diagnoses? So I'm like, oh yeah, I totally fit into some of these categories. without that actually being true, you know? And so I did take like an autism test that I found online that, and again, I don't, who knows how like accurate any of these things are, right? Like I wasn't doing research on what's the best one out there. I just clicked on the first one on Google that, you know, didn't make me pay money for a result. Um, and so the autism test was like, you know, was just a little like on a scale of like you definitely don't have it to like moderately, like you might have some things that could be autistic but we're not really sure, to like you have it. I landed on the like pretty center, maybe on the side of like it's a possibility, but like certainly wasn't on like a high side for anything. But then when I took the ADHD test, in the same sort of realm of like you probably don't have it to like there's a moderate chance you have it to like you probably most likely have it, the scale went up to like 20 and I scored like a 19.28 or something on that particular test. And again, who knows how accurate these things are, but I think it definitely just shows that like maybe autism isn't necessarily something that is on a radar for me. It might be something that I could have at least some tendencies for. But granted, I think a lot of the things that I would say point towards autism are also signs of ADHD that I have. um, but clearly, ADHD seems to be something that's pretty high up there on the likelihood of me having it at this point in my life, um, or being able to admit and hopefully confirm at some point in the near future that I have. But uh, it's just it's funny to me because like I don't know, growing up for me, ADHD always was kind of the stereotypical, maybe even stereotypical male symptoms, where it's like, you know, you can't sit still and like you're constantly like, you have all this energy to burn basically, and like you're bouncing off the walls all the time and like all that kind of stuff. And that has never been something that I have found to be true for myself. Like, I've never been that person who's just go, 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 like can't stop, doesn't want to stop, doesn't know how to stop. Like, I'm really good at sitting down while I've been without a job and just hanging out all day doing absolutely nothing. And I'm not the kind of person who like sits there and like my legs jiggling the whole time that I'm sitting. Like I can't like sit still per se, you know. But I've also realized that like I've probably learned a lot of masking skills that like I don't even realize are masking skills at this point. Um, but like I used to be a nail biter. I no longer bite my nails, but then I kind of transferred into like chewing bubble gum. And not actual bubble gum because I hate actual bubble gum, like the bubble gum flavored bubble gum, but like chewing gum and stuff. Um, that was a big thing that I did in college. Like I would chew gum from like the time I got to school until the time that I left for the day, and would just change out my piece of gum anytime my jaw got sore or like I lost the flavor and stuff out of it. So like that was a big thing. And then I've realized that like I'm like a picker, if that makes any sense. Like I don't know. Like I tend to like pick at things like in my hair or like scabs and stuff. Like I know that's gross, I'm sorry, but like it's the reality, right? And I know now that that's actually something that's pretty common for autism, but I bet that for me it's probably kind of more of a sign of ADHD, like my inability to just sit there and like it's not the same as like your leg jiggling, but it's still some sort of movement and like stimulation that like my body craves, that like I can't just sit there. Like what I remember a lot as a kid was I would do that kind of stuff like when I was playing sports and like your coach would have you all huddle up to have like a team meeting or whatever. I would sit there and I would chew the crap out of my nails or I would be picking at my hairline and like some sort of scab that was in my head and like I don't know, all sorts of things that like now I'm like, oh my gosh, like how did nobody think that this was a possibility for me at all in my childhood? And I know like things like this are maybe something that wasn't when I was a little kid, that weren't seen as like super common signs of ADHD maybe, and who knows, maybe they're not. Maybe I'm just speculating now and none of this is ADHD related at all. But it's all stuff that I'm like, man, I think maybe those are signs of ADHD, at least for me. And then I've had realizations and stuff, especially like even doing the quiz for the ADHD thing. It's like I'd never thought about how physically I don't really show a lot of signs of ADHD, but mentally I have a lot of like racing thoughts. Like my brain doesn't shut off. Like I don't know what it's like to not live in a constant state of like my brain telling me something. Luckily, it's not a lot of like negative things. Like it's not a lot of negative self-talk, but like I am constantly like thinking about the future, innovating things, like brainstorming ideas, like what could I do today or tomorrow and what can I do to be better and how can I do, like all the time. That is a constant thing that I am constantly thinking about stuff. My brain doesn't shut off. Like even when I'm diamond painting without filming and stuff, it's like I'm not really necessarily relaxing. I'm just thinking, thinking through everything. So like, I don't know, I think that's kind of a part of a different side of ADHD is like the mental side of like your brain just not ever shutting off. And then on top of that, I'm a fast talker. I talk really fast. Like if I've always put it towards anxiety, and maybe it is anxiety or is a part of it, but I talk really fast, and if I get talking really fast, or like if I start to get at all like anxious and nervous and stuff, like I will be talking so fast that like my heart rate spikes and like I can feel my heartbeat and my pulse in my neck because like I get again, I always thought it was anxiety, maybe it still is a little bit of that, but I think maybe it's a sign of ADHD too where it's like I'm just talking so much so fast I can't catch my breath. And so my heart rate jumps because I'm not taking in enough oxygen. And then, on top of all of that, the biggest thing that's absolutely an indicator that's a sign of ADHD that I never really knew this until sometime in the last year or so I learned this is that those people who are talking and like are constantly interrupting or like just can't wait to say what they want to say. And so you're in the middle of saying what you're saying, they're like, "Oh yeah, like what about this?" or like how do you feel about that? Or like this is related to that or whatever. I absolutely 100% have been that way my entire life. Like even as a kid, I used to like cut off my mom in the middle of talking about stuff because I just had to interject to say what I wanted to say. Like I needed to say what I wanted to my 2 cents. My 2 cents needed to be input, okay? And it needed to happen then, now. So it's really funny to me because I still do that all of the time as an adult. But it's weird because like I can turn it on and off or something. Like I'm not that way when I'm like working with clients. I am really focused on like how to be good with active listening and like making sure that I'm hearing what they're saying and responding, listening to listen and not listening to respond. But in my personal life, absolutely not. I just walk all over everybody else in the conversation. So like again, a sign of ADHD I've learned, which I'm like, how did nobody see this or put two and two together for me at any point before now? How did I not know? I mean, I know why I didn't know, and that's probably the same reason nobody else said anything, right? We weren't aware that these were signs of ADHD, the people who were around me or interacting with me, either because, you know, girls weren't getting diagnosed with it at the time as like for teachers and people like that, or they didn't see that side of me in school or in class or whatever and all that sort of stuff. Like they didn't know, so of course I wasn't tested, but I just think it's so funny now to see some of those signs and I'm like, I'm totally that person. But then it's also there's other things again, like the physical side of like, I don't I can sit still. I can sit perfectly still, and it's not that difficult for me to do. It doesn't take extra energy or effort. I am such a planner that, like, I feel like, well, yeah, of course, everything. I don't lose things because everything has its place. I know where everything goes. But again, then I start to go, like, is that actually masking? Am I doing these things because I've learned along the way of life that, like, it helps me be better and not lose things or not feel like I don't know, that I don't know what's going on or that I'm out of control of whatever. So who knows? Although the other thing, and I don't know, I blame this on lots of different things, but I've noticed recently that like I used to always be, I think because of anxiety, early to everything, but as I've let go some more of being anxious about things, my time management is just trash. Like I am not good at like getting everything done that I'm supposed to get done or that I want to get done before, X time or like before I have to leave. um and I know that that can be a sign of ADHD too. So I don't know if that's just at this point I'm starting to get to the point where I'm like I don't really care what other people say or think about me. So like I care less about being on time, or if it's actually just like again the anxiety that made me anxious about wanting to get somewhere on time. As I've kind of processed through some of that and kind of removed that layer, I'm like, oh, that was a masking technique that I was using to cover up my general inability to actually be able to get somewhere on time because my time management is pretty lacking. I don't know. As I said, it was just one of those things that I found it kind of funny that when I took the little online test, I was like, not only does it say this is probably a reality for me, but it's like, you almost certainly have this. And just proves that eventually, once I get insurance again, I really need to find some people in my area who can help me get some diagnoses and stuff. And like, I was watching somebody recently was talking about autism, I think in a WIP&Chat even, and well, now I lost it. What was it that they said? Hmm, man, see, maybe I don't know. Is this a sign? Is this a sign of ADHD? I lost my thought in the middle of my thought, and I don't know where it was going. Um, I'm sure it'll come back to me later, but I distracted myself making sure I was placing my diamond down perfectly on my diamond shaped symbol and totally lost where I was going to go with that. I don't know. Apparently, it wasn't important. I'm sure I'll watch this back and be like, that's what you were going to say, Sarah. Don't. That it was important. You needed to say it, and I totally have forgotten what it was. So if I happen to remember, maybe I'll pause the video and I'll add a little blurb over that says what I was going to say. But who knows? Maybe I won't remember where that train of thought was going at all. Goodness. Well, with that, I guess I should probably go ahead and wrap up. I had one more thing on my list that was related to like diamond painting stuff, but I don't think I can handle speaking anymore today. That might not be a good idea at this point in time based on my current inability to keep up with my own trains of thought. But with all that being said, I guess I'll go ahead and wrap this up. So, if you have made it to the end of my video, I appreciate you being here, and I appreciate you watching till the end. To show that you made it to the end of the video, I would love if you would leave a comment related to books. So anything in the emojis that you can find that is book related, if you'll leave that emoji in the comments down below, I would greatly appreciate it. Again, just to show that you made it to the end of the video. But aside from that, thank you all for watching today's video. If you're looking for more content related to this chapter of my life, please check out my diamond painting playlist. There we go. It should be linked in the cards or around the description box if you can't find it in the cards. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing for more content about this chapter and others. Please leave any comments or questions you have down below. See ya in the next one. Bye.